Oh, Elden Ring. This game is freaking amazing. There are so many cool enemies and bosses and weapons and abilities, and it's just a whole lot of fun. I finished my first playthrough in a bit over 100 hours. I managed to kill all the achievement bosses, but I still felt like I barely scratched the surface. I chose not to use any spirit ashes on my first playthrough, so I knew for my second run through I wanted to include them. But instead of just playing the game normally with the addition of spirit ashes, I wanted to see if spirit summons were strong enough to do all the heavy lifting on their own. The rules for the challenge are simple. No summoning players or NPCs. I'm not allowed to deal damage to any mob or cause any offensive status effects myself. All damage must be dealt either by my spirit ashes or another creature, like if a troll kills a rat or something. I'm allowed to block, parry, roll, and jump, just no attacking, putting people to sleep, or applying poison or crimson rot. I didn't really know what to expect going into this challenge. The game is still so new that I only have a very basic understanding of where things are. And considering I hadn't used any spirit summons on my first playthrough, I felt like I had a bunch of research to do before I even got started.
Look at this dude. No, 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 no.
I decided to start as the Prophet because I figured that the best assistance I could provide my Spirit Ash would be through healing and buffing them. At the start of the game, you can also choose the Fanged Imp Spirit Ash as your keepsake, and they're actually pretty decent, but there are a lot of ashes we have access to at the start of the game without much prerequisite, so for my purposes, I started with a Golden Seed.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah. Yo, holy shit, he dead!
Fight!
Maidenless.
Those are fucking fighting words, excuse me.
I am Melina. You are maidenless.
Listen, you son of a bitch!
For those of you who don't know, this is a Spirit Ash. You collect them like any other item and need to use a specific bell item to use them. Upon use, at the cost of some FP, you summon a spirit into your world to assist you in battle, or, you know, just to hang out with.
Hey!
To get this bell, you need to go to the Church of LA at night and talk to Ranni, who's this snow witch looking lady.
A pleasure to meet thee, Tarnished. I was entrusted this for thee.
I don't feel so good.
Spirit Ashes vary drastically in effectiveness based on which one you use and against what enemies they face, as well as how upgraded the Spirit Ashes are. As a general rule of thumb, Spirit Ashes can be used anytime this icon is displayed on the screen, but they can only be summoned once per encounter. Basically, if your summon dies or despawns, you cannot summon it again until you quit or rest at a site of grace. Our first order of business is getting some decent Spirit Ashes, as well as enough upgrade material to get them semi-beefy. There are two types of upgrade material for Spirit Ashes, Grave Glovewort and Ghost Glovewort. Basically, the game separates Spirit Ashes into two categories, Basic Ashes and Legendary Ashes. Legendary ones need Ghost Glovewort, and basic ones need Grave Glovewort. They both appear commonly in tombs and catacombs and scale from 1 to 10. Ultimately, we're going to want to make our way to the Altus Plateau, the land of rolling golden hills. In order to get there early and without fighting anything, we will need access to the Grand Lift of Dectus, which requires the Dectus Medallion, which is split into two halves. The first half is located in Fort Height within Limgrave, and it's easy enough to get.
I don't think you have any idea how fast I really am. I'm fast as fuck, boy.
The second is in Fort Varoth within Caelid. Now that we have both halves of the medallion, we need to head up to Liurnia to access the lift. Once in the plateau, we will be heading to the Oriza Hero's Grave near Leyendell. This crypt will give us the Vulgar Militia Ashes, which will be my preferred starting spirit summon for this playthrough. I've tried most of the alternative early game spirit ashes, such as the Wolves, Fanged Imps, Rats, or even the Rotten Hound, but the nice thing about the Militia is that they have bleed buildup on their attacks, and there's 3 of them. In addition to the ashes, we will be causing a traffic jam in order to get some decent early game armor.
Hey bro, watch your jet. Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet!
These are frame blue jeans. These are shoes that I picked up in Mexico. Ooh. This is maybe Prada.
Now that we have the Vulgar Militia Ashes, the next thing to do is to upgrade them. Before we can do that, we need the upgrade material. So let's backtrack and pop into a bunch of catacombs that we skipped over to collect a bunch of Glovewort.
Ready? Go!
can't believe you've done this.
Now that I have Grave Glovewort up to +7, before I can use them to upgrade, I need to get a girl named Roderica to move from Stormhill to the Round Table Hold. Initially I thought you had to do a quest in Stormveil Castle, but if you go around the castle and rest at a grace in Liurnia, she will move to the Round Table without you ever having to set foot in Stormveil. And since we've already been to the Altus Plains, she should be there already.
Why won't you die?
So let's head to the Round Table Hold to convince Roderica that she needs to do something with her life.
Greetings. My name is Roderica.
For some reason we need this scaly fish monster with a hammer to teach Roderica how to ghost bust before she'll upgrade her spirit ashes, but once that's done we'll be upgrading our militia to +7.
I refuse to believe it. I don't doubt you, but I know when something's too good to be true.
What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Roderica, the Spirit Tune Apprentice. Pleased to make your acquaintance.
It's kind of expensive as far as runes are considered early game, but thankfully I picked up more than enough miscellaneous runes during our travels up to this point to easily get us there. Now that we have our militia at +7, there are only a few more things we need to take care of before we can actually start playing the game. I will be picking up the 2 Fingers Heirloom Talisman, the Gold Scarab Talisman, as well as buying the Blessings Boon Incantation from the Pope.
I am Miriel, steward of this sacred chamber.
We've come to fight and to die for you.
Stand up, man, I'm not the Pope.
Now both the Incantation and the Faith Talisman can be obtained without conflict, but the Golden Scarab requires me to kill the Clean Rot Duo boss. This talisman is going to be very helpful for this run, so there's no way around it. Thankfully, our Vulgar Militia Ashes are at +7, so let's see what they can do. Since I can't assist my spirit summons through any direct damaging of enemies, I will be playing the role of support, using healing incantations and buffing Ashes of War that will be of marginal assistance to them, as well as acting as a sort of distraction for the bosses. For whatever reason, if my spirit ashes fail to hit a boss for an extended period of time, the boss will prefer to target me instead, which will basically give my summons a free hit during the fight every time it happens. And while they have aggro, I will be healing from the sidelines. Now that we have everything we need, let's kill Margaret and raid Stormveil Castle.
Foul Tarnished.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder,
what the fuck?
The next order of business is gaining entry to the royal capital, Leyndell. In order to do so, we must kill 2 of the 7 shard bearers. We've already killed Godric, so we just need 1 more. The obvious choice would be Renala, who is found inside the Rhea Lucaria Academy. On my first playthrough, I found her fight to be one of the easiest in the entire game. However, for this challenge run, it's almost impossible. You see, Renala has 2 phases, and during her first phase, she has a shield mechanic, where basically you have to kill 3 of these creepy schoolgirls in order to break her shield before you can get hits in. It's a simple enough task for a human with a brain, but for spirit summons it proves to be quite the obstacle. Their AI simply cannot grasp the concept of her shield mechanic and needing to prioritize targets. The other choice would be Radahn. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the devs decided you can't summon Spirit Ashes during his fight, so that's out of the question as well. The fact that we can't summon during his fight in particular is really bad because killing Radahn is a prerequisite to gaining access to Noxtella, the Eternal City, which happens to be the location where the most versatile Spirit Ash can be found. I don't plan on using the Vulgar Militia Ashes for the entire playthrough. They pack enough of a punch for the early game, but for bosses later on, they get obliterated. By far the best Spirit Ash, at least in the realm of versatility, are the Mimic Tears. Pretty much everyone knows how insanely strong they are by this point, so my plan was always to obtain it as early as possible. And thus I was faced with my first serious challenge in this run. How can I get Mimic Tears without killing Radahn? Or more specifically, how can I gain access to Noxtella without killing Radahn? I knew I had to figure something out, but for the meantime I wanted to focus on killing 1 more shard bearer to gain access to the capital. When you kill Godric and return to the Round Table Hold, you're granted audience with the 2 fingers, and its translator. It's a really long and boring conversation about something I didn't pay attention to, but what's important is that after this conversation, that one NPC you met at the start of the game, who called you maidenless, Vare I think his name is, moves to another location and gives us new dialogue.
Ah, there you are.
During this next encounter with him, he gives us 5 fingers that we can use to invade. If we use 3 of these 5 fingers to invade, whether we win or lose those invasions, we can then progress his questline to the next step.
Hey, come on now! There's no need to get violent. Can't you settle this peacefully?
Let's try that again.
Oh. Hey! I'm glad that you're enjoying my gift. Now, take this.
Now that we have the cloth, we need to find Maiden's Blood to drench it in. By far the easiest way to do this is to travel to a place called the 4 Belfries and use an imbued sword stone key to access the Chapel of Anticipation, where a dead lady can be found to drench our cloth in her blood. There's only one problem: the Grafted Scion. Remember the very first boss of the game, the one you're supposed to die to? Well, it's still here, and wouldn't you know it, you can't summon versus him either. This is where I will first be using a trick known as wrong warping. Basically, if we teleport to the Chapel of Anticipation and then fast travel back to the Perfumer's Grotto's Site of Grace specifically, and then immediately quit out of the game and load back in, we will find ourselves at the default position of the last area we were in. I won't go into too much detail, but basically, there are a few sites of grace around the world that the game doesn't like for whatever reason. And when you travel to these locations, the game doesn't recognize them as valid respawn locations. So when you quit out and load back in, the game looks at the last location you were at and puts you at the predetermined default location of that area. And for the Chapel of Anticipation, it happens to be on the other side of the Grafted Scion, so we can simply skip over him to get our bloody cloth. With our bloody cloth in hand, we can return to Vare and let him rip our fingernail out.
Oh, good heavens. Clench your teeth or something.
It's pretty nasty, but it's a small price to pay for the item that he will be giving us. After we join his fan club, he gives us the Pure Blood Knight's medal.
You should have this.
Which, when used, teleports us to the Mogwyn Palace, a very late game area with lots of juicy loot. In addition to the loot, it's also the location of Mohg, who happens to be another shard bearer. Now there's no way in hell my vulgar militia ashes would be able to kill a boss like Mohg, even if they were at +10 instead of +7. That is of course assuming Mohg was able to fight back in the first place. There's another trick in this game whereby if you access a boss's arena without entering through the fog wall, the boss's AI will not load in, and you'll be able to kill it without retaliation. So it's just a hop, skip, and jump over the wall, summon our militia, and bye bye Mohg.
Hey!
Seeing as Mohg is a late game boss, he drops a considerable amount of runes. Now that we have 2 shard bearers dead, we can access the capital. But before we do, we're going to use our good old trick, Wrong Warp, to access another area we're not supposed to be yet. We're going to head to the Rey Lucaria Academy to obtain another imbued stone sword key, and then head back to the 4 belfries. Back at the 4 belfries, there are another 2 portals. One that leads to the last area of the game, and another that leads to Nokron, the place where normally we need to kill Radon to get. Now, when we use the portal to teleport to either of these locations, we are within the boundaries of the overall zone. But our exact location is separated from the main structure. Thankfully, and as I'm sure you've guessed by now, we can use the Wrong Warp in Nokron to give us access to the main section of the Eternal City. The Wrong Warp for this location puts us right outside the Mimic Tier's boss fight. Now, this boss fight, as well as the Spirit Ashes themselves, copy whatever loadout the player has currently equipped. So if I take off all my clothes before starting the fight, our militia will simply have to kill a naked Jonkler who's picking a fight he can't win.
Help! Murder! Someone's been murdered!
Now the actual Mimic Tier's Spirit Ashes are a bit further on, but they're not blocked by any more bosses.
Guards! I'm being robbed!
Now that we have the Mimic Tiers, I was able to instantly get them to +10 thanks to all the upgrade material and runes I got at the Mohgwyn Palace. As I said just before, whatever you have equipped when you summon your Mimic Tiers will be what they have equipped as well, in addition to copying your stats. The only exception is that the Mimic Tiers have infinite FP, and its health is a lot higher than yours if you have them upgraded. I'm not sure exactly how its HP scales, but it's fat. Now, how I decide to set up my Mimic Tiers will determine whether or not this challenge will be possible. I spent a while researching what weapons and armor, as well as Ashes of War I wanted to outfit my Mimic with. Eventually, I ended up deciding that the Great Omen Killer Cleaver paired with the Ash of War Prayerful Strike would be a great combo. The weapon was easy enough to obtain. I just gave my Mimic Tiers an unupgraded Zweihander and let him absolutely obliterate the boss whom you get it from. But Prayerful Strikes, on the other hand, was a bit more complicated to get.
Yeah.
This particular Ash of War can only be obtained by killing an invisible dung beetle. Now, it is possible for your spirit summons to target a dung beetle. The only issue is, in this particular location, the option of summon is completely unavailable. I looked around the pond for a mob that I might be able to use to deal splash damage to kill the beetle when aiming for me, but the only thing down here are some slugs and spore thingies, both of which don't deal damage to other mobs. I considered using a different Ash of War, but I really thought Prayerful Strike had a lot of potential, so I kept looking for options. And then it hit me. There's a gargoyle that spawns relatively nearby. If I could just figure out a way to get him to follow me all the way down to the pond and then kept baiting him to attack me, eventually he might hit the beetle, right? It was a long shot, but I started working on baiting him to follow me down. Here we go. He's down! One of the reasons this was difficult was because when you bait a mob out far enough from their spawn location, they will begin to return back to that location, and the beetle is well beyond the leash range of the gargoyle. However, I discovered that if you can bait the gargoyle to attack you, and the attack is a move that moves him closer to me, I could bait his attack over and over again until he was in the pit. Eventually, I got him into the hole, at which point his AI freaked out and he started backtracking towards the corner of the pond. I sat down there with this gargoyle for a while, baiting him to attack me over and over again. I got it! Oh my gosh! No shot, bro. I actually did it. Oh, that's so crazy. So now I have everything I need for my Mimic Tiers. At this point, I spent a little time running around collecting upgrades for my weapons and some other talismans so my Mimic Tier could deal more damage and have higher equip load. and then I set off to gain entry to the capital. Now even after having killed 2 shard bears, there's still one obstacle guarding the entrance to Leyendell, and that's the Draconic Tree Sentinel. This is most likely going to be the first really challenging boss fight for my summon in the game, but to my surprise, my Mimic tier setup was goated with the motherflippin' sauce, and Horsey Boy stood no chance at all. Well, actually it was pretty close.
Graceless, tarnished, thy kind are all of a piece.
After making short work of Godfrey and Morgott, I obtained the Rolled Medallion from Melina and could now access the Forbidden Lands. But before doing so, I wanted to get some better gear for my Mimic. While I'm at it, let me take this moment to explain to you how my Mimic tier setup works. Basically, Prayerful Strike is an Ash of War that can be attached to any axe or hammer type weapon, and upon use, the user lifts their weapon above their head, gaining significant poise, and slams down, dealing holy damage and healing themselves for a percentage of their max HP. This combined with the fact that Mimic tier has infinite FP and an insane amount of HP at plus 10 makes them practically unkillable, provided they spam the attack. Now in hindsight, there was definitely a better weapon I could have put this on, but the Omen Killer Great Cleaver wasn't the worst choice in the world.
You should have paid the fine!
Now on the mountaintops of the giants, the next boss up is the Fire Giant. This lad is a beefy beefcake. He has an insane amount of HP and deals insane amounts of damage. As far as I can tell, this boss is at least in part designed to be fought on horseback, if for nothing else, but to close the distance between you and him. Mimic tiers, however, cannot utilize Torrent. My first attempt lasted for what seemed like an eternity, before I eventually died. The problem is, even though my Mimic tier is tanky, realistically he doesn't deal that much damage. So you end up being in boss fights for a lot longer than usual. And you can't simply run away from the boss, because if you don't stay close, the Mimic tier will prioritize running to you over dealing damage to the boss. This fight was absolutely doable with only your Spirit Summon, but considering that this run is basically a showcase of how broken and cheesy you can make the game, I thought that it would be an appropriate showcase for the most powerful weapon in the entire Souls universe, Gravity. So, the game plan from here on out is simple. Equip my Mimic with as much poise, equip load, and HP as possible, and pray he spams Prayerful Strike like there's no tomorrow. All the while, I can watch from the sidelines, spamming whatever healing incantation or attack power boosting Ash of War I can get my hands on.
Are you prepared?
Next is one of my favorite areas in the entire game, Farum Azula.
Hurricane Katrina! More like Hurricane Tortilla.
There are 2 mandatory bosses here, but before I get to them, this is a great place to get the final bits and pieces of my upgrade material to get my weapon to plus 25. My Mimic tier makes short work of this dragon who gives us the final upgrade material we need. And after running around a bunch of electrical rats, we are faced with the Godskin duo. This boss really puts Spirit Ash's RNG into perspective for me. If your summon doesn't do the right moves at the right time, it doesn't matter how many attacks you dodge or how many buffs you get off. Sometimes victory in a challenge like this is simply out of your control. Heal! Why are you picking a fight with both of them? No! Leave my friend alone. Oh, you got it off nice. He missed, bro. Nice. Oh! Yeah, baby! After a couple attempts though, my summon proved to be the Greater Warrior. Now at this point, the end of the game basically becomes a boss rush mode, starting with Maliketh, the big doggo. He starts out as the Beast Clergyman, but at half HP transforms into a breakdancing, spirit summon killing, percent HP reducing madman. Roasted. Nah, he's dead. No. Golly. No shot. I'm trying to heal, bro. You've already used your Estus. If I were to design a boss to specifically make this type of challenge as difficult as possible, there's a good chance that it would end up looking a lot like Maliketh. As I had mentioned, his Black Flame Crab does percent HP reduction, which basically means it doesn't matter how tanky you are, you get hit and you're dead. This is by far and away the hardest boss of this entire playthrough. I had to rethink my entire strategy after he killed me several times. So I went back to the drawing board. I obtained every item that I thought would give my Mimic a better chance at victory, but we were still not even close. I thought to myself, maybe there's a way to cheese this boss, and I took to the internet to see if anyone had developed a strategy to break Maliketh. And somewhere during my research I discovered that Maliketh is susceptible to Crimson Rot, and there just so happens to be a dragon incantation that deals a great deal of Scarlet Rot buildup. So I made my way to the altar of Dragon Communion in Caelid and perked into the ability to cast Rotten Breath.
Holy Jesus.
From here, it was clear that this alteration made the fight much more possible. All I needed to do now was find the perfect setup for my Mimic where he would cast Rotten Breath enough to inflict Crimson Rot, but wouldn't neglect healing himself with Prayerful Strike. Eventually, I ended up putting his weapon in his left hand and the seal in his right hand, which for whatever reason gave him a good chance to mix up both of the preferred attacks. And then this happened.
Come on, man.
I hate this game. I hate this game. I was so close to victory, I could flippin' taste it, man. But I pressed onward and eventually, no, I died. No. No! Dude! Oh! It was enough! Let's go! Yes! Yes! Let's go!
The hell am I?
This place is kind of big for a hot dog stand, don't you think?
So get him up there! Go! Tarnished warrior, I am returned to be granted us once more. I've given thee courtesy enough.
Mimic Tears, you better win this, bro. Mimic Tears, I swear. If you lose this, target me, bro. Thank God.
Thy strength.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
of how a Tarnished became Elden Lord. Our seed will look back upon us and recall an age of fracture.
I'm the Joker, baby!
You made it to the end of the video. Congratulations, it was a long one. I want to thank you for watching, and hey, if you enjoyed what you just saw, please consider liking the video, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. All totally free ways for you to support what you just saw and encourage this type of content on YouTube. If you're looking for non-free ways to support me, I got a Patreon, I got a Twitch. You could head over there, subscribe. If you got Amazon Prime and you're not using it on anyone, you know, you could give me the Bezos money for free. Would appreciate that. All of this footage was streamed live on Twitch, so if you want to see me collecting the footage for these playthroughs, consider just, you know, hanging out and watching me on there. I know last time I said that I would upload every month, and if you look, it's been 5 months since my last upload, I think. So clearly that didn't work out as planned, but at least it wasn't a year. So that's progress, you know. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. I do really appreciate the people who are listening to me talk about nonsense at the end of the video. So yeah, if you're still here, thank you, man. Appreciate you. Catch you on the next one. Peace.